of Christ, which is hardly even recognizable as a Christian denomination. I mean, it's an apostate denomination, but even just looking at it in a general sense, you look at what is happening in what we would call the liberal, they're misnomered the mainline denominations, but church history shows us. And of course, today the language is, well, they're the progressives. And, you know, if what you mean by progressives is people who drive a car off of a cliff and progress to the bottom of the cliff, and then there's a horrific explosion, you can call that progressiveness if you want. But we look at these denominations, they're withering away, they're disappearing, and there's a reason for it. They no longer have anything that's uniquely Christian. There's the heart of the Christian faith is gone, because the person who is the heart of the Christian faith, Jesus, had a particular view of Scripture. And once we become wiser than him and abandon his view of Scripture, not much left. Not much left. So this issue is being, some light is being shed upon this issue by the current discussion that arose a few weeks ago on Jonathan McClatchy's webinar, when Dr. Mike Licona, author of a very, very large tome from InterVarsity Press, titled The Resurrection of Jesus, A New Historiographical Approach. And as we mentioned last time, when this first came out, I believe in late 2010, yes, pretty much in early 2011, there was a huge controversy. And it was primarily focused upon comments that Dr. Licona made regarding the resurrection of some of the saints in Matthew's gospel. And his description of this is basically a mythological, it didn't happen. Okay? It's just a interesting, odd, strange way of communicating. You know, Matthew's doing something strange there, but it really doesn't have any historical foundation to it. And at the time, Dr. Norman Geisler said, I think this guy's not an inerrantist. And there was all sorts of political maneuvering and all sorts of other things that may be unfortunate. And I certainly can testify to what it's like to have Norman Geisler come after you, because he's certainly come after me. But that doesn't change the fact that, in essence, Dr. Geisler was right. He recognized something that a lot of us recognized. Now, I weighed in only in the sense that I wanted to deal with the text, and I don't have any pretensions of having being a part of the academy in that sense. I mean, I've taught a number of different schools, but I have, unlike what Mr. Jaros suggested yesterday on Twitter, he doesn't understand what my priorities are. And a lot of my critics don't, which is why they just can't understand me, and they keep misrepresenting me, and they, will continue doing so. They don't understand the idea of bringing serious, in-depth study of whatever it might be, whether it's Scripture or the beliefs of other religions, apologetics as a whole, to the church, to the serious-minded believers who want to be equipped, but who are living a life and raising children and doing the things that they've been called to do, and hence can't go off to some ivory tower someplace, and yet have every bit as much of the Spirit of God as anybody else does. I think one of the reasons that some of the hooty-tooty scholars don't like me is because I demythologize scholarship. I take difficult stuff and I make it understandable, not by simplifying it to the level of being inaccurate, but just getting rid of a lot of the scholarese that sort of makes it look like we speak another language and have a special gnosis that no one else has. Sorry. If you want to reject my standing as a scholar, fine. If you want to reject those 24 some odd books and the range that they go into and the languages of it, hey, go ahead. No, I don't care because I'm still helping the people in the Czech Republic. I don't know what you're doing. You know, you may be off presenting your paper someplace, and more power to you, and they'll clap for you, and then we'll let eternity figure those things out, okay? I'm not really overly concerned about it. Anyway, the past couple, the past 2 weeks, basically, the issue specifically, of course, is Dr. Licona, I guess, is coming out with a new book. And it's a discussion of the differences between the Gospels. Well, that's not something we haven't discussed before. We've discussed it many times before. I spent over a decade teaching through the Synoptic Gospels. And not in doing Matthew, then Mark, then Luke, then John. In parallel, where the differences are right there in front of you. You can't dodge them, can't skip them. And this comes up all the time in apologetic encounters. And so what surprised many people, and you can go back, I'm not going to rehash all this, you can go back, listen to what I had to say. I played Dr. Licona's comments, I allowed him to speak for himself, and I responded to his statement that Mark was confused. Now, I learned when I went to Fuller Theological Seminary that there's a certain range of vocabulary that you're supposed to use when you're saying the Bible is wrong. You don't want to say it that way. So what you do is you use what might be called weasel words. But, at Fuller, the big thing was, I remember the night, clearly, I remember the night when in one of my New Testament classes, we dealt with Jairus' daughter. And here was the exact terminology that was used. There is a strong tension in the text. So you use politically correct buzzwords. There's a strong tension in the text. When what you're saying is there's a contradiction, there's an error, whatever else, rather than just coming straight out and saying it, you use these less offensive words. Well, saying Mark was confused is saying Mark was wrong. And though I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about some of the Greek stuff again, just so that people are clear, because Dr. Licona first said, once I did the program, I don't pay any attention to white. And it was just white. Nothing else, just white. And